Welcome everyone, Stealthy Sharon here, and today I'm bringing you my review of Remnant from the Ashes. Gunfire Games developed Remnant with Perfect World Entertainment as the publisher and released it in August 2019. To put it simply, Remnant is a Souls-like game, but with an emphasis on third-person shooting rather than melee combat. However, in each of the different areas, each map is procedurally generated to create new experiences in each playthrough. Another thing that Remnant offers that most Souls-like games don't is the ability to play this cooperatively with a friend, which is what most of my time with this game has been. For a AA game, Remnant brings a great experience that I think many fans of the genre will enjoy. And if this is something you've played, then let me know in the comments below. Alright, let's get into the review. Starting off with the graphics and presentation, I'd say it's pretty good. The graphics themselves are decent. Not amazing by any means, but I think they're nice to look at and still hold their own even in 2022. In the beginning, it's very dark and gloomy. That seems to be typical in a Souls-like game. But each of the different worlds have their own distinct style, so the player can expect some variety as they progress. Many of the enemy character models, whether normal mobs or bosses, were also well designed. Each followed their area's own theme which complemented the feel of the area, such as swamps focusing largely on insect-like creatures. Even many of the weapons look decent. I especially liked how when you attach different mods to your weapon, it would change the appearance. The story in Remnant starts strong with the player entering a post-apocalyptic world where an evil tree-like entity known as the Root has destroyed civilization as we know it. Right in the beginning, players find themselves in Ward 13, where they talk to the survivors and learn a bit about their founder, who might know how to stop the Root. In their quest to find this founder, the player travels to other worlds and learns a bit more about the Root and the effect it had on those worlds. I think this story here is interesting, but despite the opening hours of the game with the cutscenes and a lot of dialogue, much of the story is actually told through random journal entries and letters that could be found sprinkled throughout the different areas. There is definitely a place for this kind of medium to convey story in games, but I don't think it should be the main thing in a game like this. Video games have a much larger range of telling a story than solely through words, especially when they're just random exposition. In video games, I'm always sure that in many of these instances, the devs could create a more interactive and meaningful way to tell a story to the player. Hardly anyone is going to remember a note about a person they never met, especially if it ties to the story several hours later in the player's journey. Honestly, most of what I know about the story is only because I've played through the game almost 3 times now, and I've spent some time reading up on various lore on the game's wiki page. Luckily, the gameplay here is what shines, and why most people would be sitting down to play. The game plays as a third-person shooter Souls-like. So, the player will need to aim and shoot and take cover, all the trappings of a shooter. But they'll also need to keep track of enemy patterns and timing so they could dodge appropriately. The different guns and the melee all seem like there's weight behind the weapons, and it feels good. One thing I had to get used to in the game was the lack of any hip firing. Any shooting has to be fired from an aiming position first, otherwise the player will perform a melee attack. There were more than a few mishaps I got myself into because of forgetting that fact. In Remnant, there are no classes or any specific builds that you need to be working towards in the beginning. Your playstyle is dependent on your loadout, which consists of 2 guns with 2 mods attached, a melee weapon, a 3-piece armor set, a trinket, 2 rings, and allotted trait points. It may seem like a lot, but I thought it was really neat finding the right combinations with all the gear. None of it is really binding, as you could easily swap out to something else if it's not working. Admittedly, this might require a bit of grinding to upgrade your new gear set, but I still think this system is very versatile and allows for experimentation. The mods are especially important as they can sometimes make or break a fight. Many of the mods are active abilities you use that can do things like summoning a minion, adding an element to your firing, and changing your firing mode completely into something powerful. Trying out the different mods along with the different weapons is part of the fun in deciding what works best. And since you're only allowed 2, they become incredibly important choices. The trait system is something that I can see some people not liking. At the start of the game, a player only has access to a few traits. As a player does certain actions, such as constantly reviving a friend or vaulting over ledges, they'll unlock more traits. Defeating bosses also provide a new trait for the player to spend their points on. So it gets difficult trying to create a desired build running through your first playthrough. However, I'd say that this isn't really an issue. While I do think the traits help, I don't think will matter that much on your first run since most will choose normal or hard to start. After the completion of the campaign, a player gains the ability to purchase an item that resets their trait points to reallocate them as they see fit. I think this actually encourages future runs in order to build out the character's playstyle and tackle the harder difficulties that probably require more min-maxing. Luckily, this game also encourages multiple playthroughs with their randomized maps, loot, and bosses. This means that every playthrough can have different map layouts and bosses. I think this is both a good thing and a bad thing. The maps can offer different layouts, but by and large, most people will start feeling like they've been to a certain area before. Each map is constructed from sections and all put together to create a layout. This means that the player will see the same repeated features over and over again. There were many times when I needed to double check to make sure that I didn't accidentally go back to a previously visited area. However, the different bosses was certainly a huge boon for the game. Obviously, over time, a player will eventually see all the bosses the game has to offer. Although, I'm on my third playthrough right now with my wife, and I was really surprised that I was still running into several bosses I hadn't seen before. There's definite replayability here, and not just retreading old ground. One slightly negative point I'd mention is some of the mechanics for the boss battles. Some of these bosses really threw my buddy and I through the ringer, which is to be completely expected in a game like this. However, I felt that more than half of them relied on using a bunch of extra mobs to account for difficulty rather than interesting boss mechanics. It's still a fun, wild scramble through the chaos trying to beat these kinds of bosses, but I think it makes the bosses that have unique gameplay that much more enjoyable. That being said, there were more than a few that we just scratched our heads at as to how on earth anyone could get through them solo. So bear that in mind if you plan on playing Remnant by yourself. On that note, the biggest draw to the game for me by far has been the multiplayer aspect to it. This game is insanely fun to play with other people, and it allows you to do so practically right from the start. There's none of this having to summon the person just for that particular boss run, only for them to disappear and then have the host resummon. And it runs pretty well. I barely had any connection issues playing, despite me being in Japan and the people I played with all the way back in the US. If my thoughts on the game don't make this already apparent, then I'll just come out and say that Remnant from the Ashes is definitely worth the asking price of $39.99 USD. To be honest though, I got this for free from the Epic Game Store. However, I did purchase the DLC on sale, which this game goes on sale a lot, so you could easily get it for a steal. I have just under 100 hours with the game at the moment, so obviously I got my money's worth had I spent the full price. There's a lot of content here, and if you have a co-op buddy to play with, then you're in for a ton of fun. As I said, I played through the game twice. I'm working through a third playthrough right now with my wife, and playing the DLC content with a friend. And I haven't even touched a New Game Plus yet, which I'm sure I'll get around to in the future. Overall, Remnant from the Ashes is a really fun game with some neat randomization that keeps things fresh for the most part. I think players who might not be the biggest fans of Souls-like can use this game as a gateway into the genre. I don't mind playing Souls-like games, but they always become really intimidating to me after a while, and I feel like I can only play for a little bit before needing to set it aside. However, Remnant made it really easy to play with friends, which, in turn, made everything that much more palatable. You start laughing over the pitfalls everyone is making, rather than being super critical and frustrated when playing solo. There's a few issues here and there with the difficulty curve and story presentation, but ultimately, it's worth a try if this looks interesting to you. I hope that Gunfire Games eventually comes out with a much-needed sequel. What do you think of Remnant? Do you agree with me? Tell me your thoughts or experiences with the game in the comments. I hope this helped you in some small way, and if it did, then please leave a like, comment, subscribe, or whatever it is you feel like doing. Thanks for watching and have a nice day.